Okay. Can you tell us why you joined the Army?
The reason why I joined the Army was because there was a little bit of background. My father was in the military when I was little. I wanted to follow his footsteps. Also, there really wasn't much of a job market in the little tiny town that I came from. And I just also wanted to tour and be able to travel areas and lands and places that I've never been before.
Good, good. And your specialty was mobile communications, correct?
My specialty in the military was mobile communications, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what the training was like for mobile communications?
Mobile communications training consisted of 6 months of initial training, what we called AIT, and that was in Fort Gordon, Georgia. There was different phases of it, from learning the intricate details inside the communications vehicle itself to learning how to put up antennas, learning how to work on generators, the whole system itself, to be able to get communications in. And there are also different types of communication equipment within the mobile communications team. So we had to learn every aspect of it, which took a good 6 months in order for us to learn it all.
Do you think that would you say that the 1st Division prepared you for your mission?
Can you be a little more explicit?
Well,
or
with the
detailed?
training that you received, we can move on to when you got to Iraq.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, when
Right.
you were in Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom, right?
Yes.
And so you arrived in Iraq, and did you feel prepared when you arrived there?
Initially, when we started training to go to Desert Storm in Iraq, we started our training even before that in the States, and I was actually stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas. And we had taken all of our equipment and went out into the field areas, into the back wood lines, and that was where we did a lot of our initial training, and spent weeks in the woods. And we had to learn also how to put the equipment together in complete chemical gear, which is not an easy task. But we did learn how to do that over and over and over. They say repetition will eventually, you'll become proficient with it. And as time progressed, we learned how to do it. And we also did a lot of night training and a lot of road marches to build our endurance. And once we were close to the initial deployment, we prepared all our vehicles, had them painted, and had... I need to take a break.
Yep, you can stop and start.
Okay, because I'm fidgeting, so I need to...
Again, remember, you're a person. You're a soldier, and you're a person just like everyone else.
Right.
That's part of
Right.
That's
And
part of
That's
what's,
right.
It's
I'm-
we're humanizing
Right.
the image of a soldier.
Well, I'm trying to remember each thing just to be a little bit more detailed, and sometimes I think that I skip over stuff that might be important, so I got to stop and then try to remember again. So that's where I start fidgeting.
You don't have to second guess yourself or anything. It's really just what your most vivid memories are.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. So I'll just go into how we prepared the equipment then.
Well, just how you prepared to go to Iraq, and I think
Okay.
you just talked about a lot of that.
Okay.
And that was good.
Okay.
So if you can tell your good friend, the Big Red One,
Okay.
what it was like when you arrived in Iraq then.
Okay. When we got onto the commercial airline, to get on to, or to go to Iraq, I remembered that I slept a lot on the airplane, or as much as I possibly could, because I wasn't sure, or I wasn't aware of what was about to happen. And of course, being young and inexperienced in these kind of areas, I was scared. I was frightened and just not knowing what was going to happen. So when we landed and came off of the airplane, the dry heat and the smell of sand and the area was my initial feeling, and how I initially remember it. And immediately after getting off of the airline, and mind you, we were not in a terminal or an airport per se, we came off of the airplane, stepped off of it, and immediately were placed onto Greyhound-style buses. And all of the windows were closed and shut. They had curtains over them. We were immediately explained to that you do not open those curtains, you do not peek out the curtains, you leave those closed. So once again, we were in the dark. We had no clue what was going on, where we were going, and so again, we were a little bit frightened, or I was a little bit frightened more than the others. And of course, you can't show that if you are a supervisor. You don't want to show that you're scared or frightened in front of your subordinates. So you keep those emotions and those things to yourself. So when we did arrive to Khobar Towers and went into the area, the compound, was when we were able to at least get an idea of where we were. Came off of the buses, and then we were put into large towered apartments, which was our staging area. And then we were explained that this was where we would wait until our equipment arrived. And once it did, we went to the loading docks, pulled all of the equipment brought all the equipment from the area, and then we started preparing to drive to different locations where we were needed and given assignments and where we were supposed to go. I know we didn't get much sleep, and we were traveling at night, and so they told us that we needed to get a lot of sleep during the daytime, in which we tried, which is difficult for the normal human being because we're used to sleeping at night and working during the day. And so it was a little bit of an adjustment. But it helped in the long run, because then when we were traveling at night, we didn't fall asleep quite as easily. And once we made it to our initial staging area, we all separated into different directions, our platoon did, and we were given different assignments to different companies from there.
That was really good, Brenda, because it was really personal, and I think it's feelings that I can imagine people relating to that, like in a bus with curtains closed. So can you tell the Big Red One what your mission in Iraq was?
My mission in Iraq with the Big Red One was to provide communications for any and all of the different units that were fighting over in the war.
And how did you accomplish your mission?
Can you be a little more explicit or detail what you're looking for?
You had told us on the phone how you would have to, you were mobile.
Okay.
How you had to set up.
Okay.
What the communications were, who they were for. Yeah.
Okay. my mission, or our mission, in the communications field for Big Red 1 was to supply the mobile communications for any and all different divisions, and not the different divisions, but different companies, such as anybody in the medical field, the aviation field, the military police, supply units, engineers, any type of unit that needed communications. That was our job, is to make sure that they had the ability to talk from the front lines all the way to the rear echelons.
What were some of the challenges of mobile communications?
Some of the challenges for mobile communications is when you're in the desert area. We had sandstorms, and that seemed to be one of the biggest issues that we had, is being able to keep our antennas up in the air and keep them angled in the area where they needed to be positioned to get another reading through to another mobile communications unit. The sandstorms would knock down the antennas because they were at times 35 feet up in the air, and trying to keep them staked down through these sandstorms was very difficult. Even though we put in 6-foot long, what we called rock stakes, it still tore them out of the ground, and it still knocked our communication systems out. So during that time, we immediately, once the storm had passed, we immediately had to run outside and put our antennas right back up. Keeping sand out of anything and everything, our generators was a difficulty, because the sand would get into the generator itself, so we would always have to keep them cleaned. We improvised in a lot of situations. When we had an opportunity to write home or talk to people from home, some of the things that we would request, believe it or not, were pantyhose. And we would put the pantyhose over the filtration systems, even from our Humvees to our generators, just to keep the gritty sand out of things. The challenges also were, just being there sometimes, and making sure that everything was kept in order.
I know when we spoke on the phone too, Brenda, you talked about just the physical challenges of having to to take your equipment down and set it up again. What did you need to be able to be on the move and repeatedly set up things?
One of the challenges was having to take the equipment down and put it back up in a timely manner. We didn't always know when that was going to happen either, because we were put wherever we were needed, and you needed to be able to put that equipment in quickly and tear it down quickly. And quickly, I mean within 15 to 30 minutes tops. But then again, that's what we trained for when we initially learned communication systems and how to put it in. But the problem also is you're dealing again with the sand. Trying to even walk in that sand I think the best explanation is if you were on a sandy beach, how difficult it is to walk on the sandy beach. That was kind of the direction or the problem we had, was that sand was really hard to walk on, and trying to put in a communication system, was walking in that and then trying to keep everything clean. That was a big challenge for us. And one of the other thing too was your weapon. Of course, we all had to keep our weapons clean, and that was another issue we had, because you have to keep it oiled. so that the mechanisms would keep moving, and be able to fire when and if necessary. So the sand getting in our weapons, it was a daily challenge. Every day you had to wipe your weapon down because you knew that the grit in the sand was going to get inside it. And of course, I was chosen for whatever reason to carry the M16 machine gun, and it's extremely heavy. But I had that and my M16 to carry. It was a challenge, but I learned how to manipulate the weight of things, and that would be able to help me adjust and be able to walk a little easier or move in different places a little bit easier.
You talked about, Iraq being a Muslim country, they have the call to prayer, 5 times a day, and you said in the morning, that's when attacks would happen, and after the morning call to prayer, if you got past that, you knew you were okay. Can you talk about that a little bit, about being prepared for attacks in the morning?
In the mornings were the prayer time for the area and the culture that we were in, and that was the time frame where prior to the early morning, all of the soldiers would only put one soldier to man the equipment. The rest would all go out to our fighting positions, and we would wait until after the sunrise before we would come back to our normal daily activities. And it was extremely cold. A lot of the soldiers being able to adjust from the two different temperatures, it would be drastic. At least a good 40-degree difference in temperatures. So when we would put on all our gear and our equipment in the morning to go out to our positions to fight if necessary, it would be extremely cold, and by the time the sun came up and the sun had completely exposed itself, then we would be able to go back to our areas. But at that time it was always warm. The temperature had already risen at least a good 20 degrees. So by then we're already taking clothes off or extra gear off just to try to adjust to the temperature. And during the whole time, I don't believe that we ever came across anything major. But that was just our preparation and adjustments in the morning.
Okay, there was another thing you talked about, as a woman being there, just the challenges of staying clean, of just the comforts that you were used to, and then you arrive in Iraq, and it was just a different reality. If you could speak to that, just the day to day.
Okay. Well, as a woman or a female in general, being overseas in that type of environment was very challenging. And I think because we take so many things for granted that it does become a challenge when you're placed in an environment such as this. But you can adapt, and you can find different ways to help yourself and keep. One of the biggest things is keeping clean. As a female, we have to keep ourselves clean in order to be healthy, and in order to be able to keep up with anybody else. One of the challenges we had, again, is staying clean. And what I did in a lot of the situations was when I knew that we were being deployed overseas, I purchased a large tub. I started taking what we call bird baths by our equipment, or inside of our little what do you call it? Inside our equipment, the little truck in the back. And during the daytime, I would take a 5-gallon jug and I would fill it up with water and I would put it out in the hot sun. And in the evening, by then, it would obviously be really hot, so I would be able to take a nice hot bath in the evening. I'd pour all of it in the little tub in the back of my little truck trailer area, close the doors, and take what we call a little sponge bath in the back. And when I would finish, I would reuse or use the rest of the water, and I'd lean over the back of my vehicle and I would wash my hair. And even then, I had long hair. I wanted to cut my hair because I figured it would make it a little bit easier, but I just didn't want to do that. So these were just different challenges as a female I had to endure, and keeping my head clean. And then, of course, I would take my my tub again. My tub was actually my savior. I would wash my clothes in the tub, and I would string some cord from the back of our generators to the back of our equipment, and I would, during the early morning hours, that's how I would dry my clothes and be able to at least keep semi-healthy. Of course, there were no facilities for anyone. So another thing that I would do is I would take a cardboard box. Now let me know if I'm going a little too in detail here. And my entrenching tool, my little shovel, and I would walk at least a couple 100 feet out, and I'd grab my poncho and I'd cover up, and that was actually how we would have to utilize the facilities. But of course, we'd get to the area where our soldiers were pulling guard duty and let them know, obviously, what we were doing, and that way we could get back onto the area where we were in our little, as they could call it, our little convoy area, or little area where we, our little site, and come back, and that was pretty much it for us. And the males, well, I won't, they did their own thing. We never really spoke about, the male, female, the ability men have a little bit more easier than females type of thing. We had to adjust. We just had to be able to do what we adjust to the situation and make it happen. There was no crying that we were females and it's not fair. It's just that there was no time, no position for us to be able to do that. You were put into this, you volunteered to come to do this, and you just had to make it happen. And we would hold on to each other at times when it would get a little bit frustrating. And as women, we know that we go through different hormonal situations, and so we pretty much leaned on each other to get through that time, and that was about it.
So you touched on something that I think we should talk about.
Brenda, I'm gonna pause for just a second.
Yes.
I think we should talk about if you were treated differently as a woman in the Army. If you could look at the camera and just tell us some of the challenges as a woman, if you were treated differently.
Okay. Well, also as a woman, some of the things I had difficulties was being able to be accepted, I guess, as one would say. Being a female and in my structure and my size, it was very challenging because there were a lot of males that didn't feel that women should be in the military. And of course, when I went in, initially, it was just right, it was post-Vietnam era, and a lot of the males hadn't adjusted to the fact that there were females in the military that could do more jobs than being a nurse. So we were starting to we weren't in combat positions just as of yet, but the positions such as what we were in brought us into combat. So because everyone needed communications. So we had to participate in this type of environment and adjust to it. One of the things was the communications equipment is not really, as we said, light. It was a little heavy, but I learned how to manipulate the weight and adjust the weight and learn how to pick up heavy bags, 50 pounds or 75 pounds, and be able to pick it up and put it where it needed to go. Sometimes it was so heavy I'd have to drag it, but I made it happen. Picking up generator trailers, lifting the trailer up so that you could set it up. And those were some of the things that were quite heavy. And even though it was that heavy, I still made it happen. And a lot of the men didn't think that females had the ability to be able to do that. And so they would make fun of you, or they would call you, less than what you really were. In one instance, when I initially went into the military, on my first active duty station, I was being assigned a team to be on, and I was sitting outside. At that time, I smoked cigarettes, and I was very young. And I was sitting outside, and my platoon sergeant at that time and the team chiefs of the platoon were all sitting in there trying to decide which team I was going to be placed on. And some of the things that I heard were not very nice. Some were, I'm not taking a female, she's too weak. Would you look at that, did you really look at that girl? She's tiny, she's not going to be an asset, I don't want her. Were just a couple different little snippet things that I heard. And of course it is very heart-wrenching, but that also made me want to prove them wrong. I told myself I was not going to let that get to me, and I was going to make sure I knew how to do that job inside and out, and I wasn't going to ask for any help from anybody. So that was my initial introduction to the military and females in the military, in the communications field. And each and every unit that I had gone to from that time on, I made sure that I was going to prove each one of them wrong, that I could do my job. And so when I got into the Big Red One, and I was overseas during combat in Desert Storm, all that I had trained for or prepared myself for really helped out. Mentally, physically, emotionally, it all put into play. And I was able to be that much stronger of not only a person, but as a soldier.
Yes. What we'd like to talk about again is your challenges as a woman, how other soldiers treated you as a woman, and then how you reacted to that. Just the challenges of being a woman.
So you want me to more or less repeat what I said earlier?
So I think the main points are that I think there are a couple of really interesting things that you said that maybe you can kind of recap for us. One being that when you first went out there and they were trying to assign you to a team, what you heard and how that motivated you. And then secondly, how that turned into when you were a supervising role, how that reaction was being a female, entering a team and then also leading a team.
Well, I didn't even go into the leading of the team, so yeah.
Yeah, right.
So kind of go
Yes,
through
you're
that a
right.
little bit.
Yeah, your
Sure.
your leadership style then.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, if you could just talk about that.
Okay. Well, one of the things was because this is mainly about Big Red One, so I kind of was trying to keep all of the questioning or the answers in that area. So, but if you want other things as well, I'm more than happy to talk about that as well too. So, okay.
Right. We're talking about the First Division. So yeah, just how you were treated as a woman, and then your personal reaction to that.
Okay.
But that also motivates how you move forward in life. So as a leader, you know, if that changed the way that you led
Right.
later on, then
Okay.
that still is relevant.
Okay. Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Being a female in the military has been there's been a lot of challenges from the very beginning of when I went into the military. It was post-Vietnam era, so a lot of women coming in was new, and it was frowned upon still from a lot of male counterparts. They didn't feel that we had what it takes to be a soldier. And I'll go into the first time that I was assigned my first duty unit, which actually was in the 2nd Infantry Division in Camp Casey, Korea. And I was waiting for my assignment. I was asked to step outside while the platoon sergeant spoke with his team chiefs, team leaders, to find out who more or less I would be assigned to. And the platoon leaders or the platoon sergeants or the team chiefs at that time had made their point and I don't think they really understood that I was listening or could hear what they were talking about. And they had said that they didn't want me on their team because of my stature and my size, and they didn't think that I would be able to carry my load. So they didn't feel that they wanted me on their team. And at that time, of course, I was very young. I was 18, 19 years old, and it hurt my feelings. But one of the teams did take me in, and I wanted to prove to them that they were wrong. I could do the job just as good, if not better than them. So that was my first initial, I guess you could say, confrontation, being a female. And even though it was a difficult, hard thing to swallow, the fact that there were so many other teams later on that didn't want me on their team because I was a female, it actually helped me become a stronger person, being that I had to work harder I had to show them that no matter what they said, no matter what they did, they're not going to get under my skin. And so I utilized all of that information and those things that happened to me. And as I started getting more rank or attaining more rank, earning more rank, which again was another challenge because a lot of the male counterparts would get the positions of leadership, and it took a while for me to be able to become a team chief and a section sergeant and a platoon sergeant. But I was the first to always volunteer to go to schools to better myself. I was a very, very young leader with a team because I fought for it. I went to school. My first school was what they call primary leadership course, and I did very well in it. I was one of the undergrads, and once I finished that class, which was 2 months long, and I excelled in the course intentionally because I wanted to prove to people or prove to my counterparts that I was a leader and I would be a good leader. That I worked hard to excel in that class, as well as my second course, which was what they call BNOC, which is a basic non-commissioned officer course. I did very well in that as well. I was very young again and taking that class, and even in my advanced leadership course, which would give me the opportunity to get my E7 or my Sergeant First Class. I excelled in that class as well. I was the Distinguished Honor Grad, and because of it, I was given many opportunities as a leader. But these are just some courses that I took to try to prove to others that I could do the job and become a good leader and excel in any job given, and I would do it just as good as any male counterpart. And as I went up the ranks, it was a challenge for me. It took a lot, but I just wanted everybody to know that just because I'm a female doesn't mean that I can't do the job as any other male.
All right. Now, the 1st Division was part of Desert Storm, and you were with the 1st Division in Iraq. So I'd just like to talk about that, the Iraqi army as the enemy, and just your feelings about that, and what it was like working with the 1st Division.
When I was deployed to Desert Storm, some people would ask me at times, what are my thoughts of the enemy? And being that I was really young and I really didn't know their culture or who they were and the purpose of everything, I just knew that I was going overseas and I was a soldier and I was going to fight for our people. And once we were there, I really didn't have any, I guess I didn't have any thought process of the enemy as being bad or good, because I really didn't know them. I just knew that I had a mission and it had to be completed, and that was what I was supposed to do. But as we came across the Iraqi people, my thoughts actually changed. The question again, please.
So we'll just talk about when you got to Iraq with the First Division for Desert Storm, and just your mission there,
Okay.
and how you viewed it before you got there and once you got there.
Okay. Once I had gotten to Saudi Arabia and Iraq for our mission with the Big Red One, I hadn't really thought about the people, their culture. We were, of course, told, but I didn't really understand it or take it into heart, the type of people that they were. I was more focused on my mission, and it was to provide communications to our military and our soldiers and our units. But as time progressed and I was able to come across a few of the local people, it gave me a different perspective. You know, when you look at an enemy, or people say enemy, you immediately think of a threat. And once you see once you see people and families and children, you realize that they're human too. Because you look at them and you think, oh, they're monsters, or they're there to hurt you. So when I came across regular people, that's not what you saw. And even when we were passing different units in different areas during our convoys, and you'd pass the burning tanks that we had taken out, you know, there were bodies hanging out of the tanks, and some of them were actually still burning. And the smell was horrible. And certain times during the convoy, we also came across soldiers that had given up and had given in to defeat, and they weren't the normal soldiers that we would actually expect. They had little to no water or food. They were told to fight for a leader that didn't care about them. Their boots were taken away from them, so they were running around in the sand with no boots, and a lot of them no food and nothing to drink in the middle of a desert. And how can you fight or want to be a part of that culture or those people? And so it made me really take for granted, or made me realize not to take for granted what we had. And made my little things of my hygiene or being able to stay clean, it just made me really just appreciate even that little bit. Um, during my time with the 1st Infantry Division and the unit that I was with, there was a bit of camaraderie. There was a lot of laughs. We did jokes. We played jokes on each other. In one instance, when we were in the middle of the desert, there was a gentleman, a local, that had come to our little compound, as I would call it, and he brought his horse with him. He was carrying his horse, and we wouldn't let him get too close to the area. And he was actually just looking for maybe some sugar or whatever kind of things that we might have for trade. And he actually wanted just a little bit more of that, being that there were females on our compound. And to the male counterparts, they actually thought it was pretty funny. And to the females, we were not that excited about that. We were pretty scared off. But in the evenings, I worked a lot of the evening shifts. They would come pounding on my door of the communications equipment, and they would say that the gentleman with the horse is here. He wants to trade you for a horse, and we're obligated to let him do that. So I just thought it was pretty comical at the time that my soldiers were willing to trade me for a horse. So it was pretty funny. In my eyes, it was anyway. But we would play different little jokes on each other just to pass time. We even went as far as doing the scorpions. The guys would bet on scorpions, whose scorpion was better than the other, and who would win and who wouldn't. And I don't know if I should say that, but that was some of the things to pass time. Batteries were a really a commodity. Because we had back then, of course, it was just our cassette players, and being able to listen to music that was from home. It was nice. So our little cassette players would run out of batteries quickly, and so it was nice to be able to have that from home. Before we even deployed, we all had gone through a lot of rigorous physical training and to prepare for it, and with that got to know each other real close. We spoke of our challenges, our personal problems with each other, and we were brothers and sisters. And it didn't matter at that time, the higher rank or the lower rank. We just knew that we were going to have to rely on each other to be able to make it through. And the good thing of it is we did. There wasn't a single person on my team or in the platoon or in our company that didn't come home. It was great.
That's great. Were you able to communicate with your family and friends back home? And if you were, how did you communicate, and how regularly?
And how did it feel being, like, how was it, how did you feel connected or disconnected from home while there? I mean, you had a family.
Yes.
How did that feel being out there, and how in some ways did you feel stay connected to that?
Okay. Communicating with my family and anyone back in the States was challenging. It was very difficult. Even though we were in a communications company and had communications equipment, but it wasn't the type of equipment that you could use to be able to go thousands of miles back to the States. We were given an opportunity, I believe I was able to two times out of my 8 months being there, to call home and talk to family. And it was merely a tent, a large tent that they had put up and put in satellite communications, large satellite communications. And we were able to talk to our family for 10 minutes. And the 10 minutes went really fast, because sometimes it would take a few minutes for the operator to get through and be able to, of course, the time change too was a little bit challenging for us. What might be 2 o'clock in the afternoon would be 3 o'clock at home. So being able to get a hold of our family, and of course they didn't always know that when we were going to call or if we were going to call. So a 3 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning phone call might take your family a little bit of time to get up, and you might miss the call. So it was very challenging. But I know when I was able to get a hold of my family, first thing I would always let them know is that I was okay, and that everything was fine. I didn't want to worry them and think that, you know, things were harsh or rough at any point anyway. Of course, you wanted to let them know that you were fine, that you were okay, and that you were going to come home. But more or less, we were led into a big, large tent, and they would blow a big horn, and then we would immediately call. And after the 10 minutes were up, they would blow a horn, and we were filed right back out of that big tent. And that was it. That was all we had. Other than being able to write home, which I did on a frequent basis. I wrote home just to let them, even if it was a note or two, just to let them know that I was okay. And of course, they would send care packages, which was wonderful, to us. Even a little Snickers bar was heavenly. And my mom actually sent me a Snickers bar. She was the one who did it because she knew that it was my favorite and it was her favorite. It was our own little sign and secret. And then, of course, family would just send letters to us, and it was the greatest time ever to be able to get a letter from home, you know, to say, hey, we're doing good. And I would do the same thing, vice versa, even though it was just a note or two to say, everything is fine, we're moving along, and the mission is going well.
Good, good.
Can I ask a question? So in those moments, you know, that's where, you know, in you talking about that, I feel the sacrifice that you had to make in your voice, right? But what did it mean to sacrifice for the country? Sacrifice your life for the country and for our freedom. You know, you talk about Iraq and the freedoms or lack of freedoms that they had as a nation. What did it mean to fight for your country and sacrifice these things?
When asked what my thoughts are as far as sacrifices that we made, as a soldier and as a parent, when asked what are some of the sacrifices that I made or that we make as a soldier, and also as a parent, there are a few. Number one, of course, as a parent, you miss a lot with your children if you have children. You miss a lot of the things that most parents take for granted. Birthdays, you know, learning how to walk, school performances, graduations of each year, many things like that. As far as sacrifices as a soldier, and why do we fight for our country? It's because we love our land. And being Native American descent, this is our land. This is our country. And it doesn't matter whether we put that uniform on as a Native American, or whether it was in the past. You still are fighting for your country. And I do it proudly, and I did it proudly as a soldier in the 1st Infantry Division. And I would do it again. Of course, I'm a little bit older now. It'd be a little bit more difficult, but I wouldn't hesitate. I'd still do it again.
Thank you. How were you treated when you came back home, Brenda?
When we came back home and we landed back on our land, I have to say that it was overwhelming. There were the ticker tape parades, and there were the welcome home signs. There were so many people. I hadn't thought that this would be something that I would experience. There were banners everywhere. There were flags all over. There were marching bands. There was music. And I didn't look at the mission that I did as quite that phenomenal. Although I guess a lot of the people at home thought that. I know I got a letter at one point from my mother who said that people really have changed overall. Instead of being the era of the Vietnam War where it was very difficult and they came home with such scrutiny and hate, the times have changed. And they were more supportive of our military. They were more supportive of the job that we were doing, and there were yellow ribbons on people's yards and trees and doorsteps, and they were very supportive of us, which made it a lot easier for us to accept and to be appreciative. I, of course, when I got back, we were asked to have volunteers to go to a welcome home parade that was in New York City and also in Washington, D.C. And I gathered all of my gear. It was a few days. It was very nice. But the support that we got was so amazing. You really felt like you were a superstar. I even had a group of young ladies and males come up to me and ask me for my autograph, which was quite surprising. I wasn't expecting that. But they gave me a postcard that they had, and they gave they had newspapers, and they all asked us to sign our signature to them because they thought that it was important part, I guess, a memento for the time. Where they are now, I wouldn't have a clue, but it was nice. It was really nice. It felt us feel special, and I was a little bit overwhelmed in the beginning, but it was nice to come home. Not only just to that, but it was just nice to come home, back to family and friends, and back to the reality of at least being able to wake up in your own bed and not in a cot.
What did you tell your husband and your children about working with the First Division?
During that time, or
When
now?
you got home and you look back, you were working with the First Division, the historic First Division. What did you tell them about working in Iraq with them?
Initially, when I first came home, I really didn't discuss my experience overseas. I didn't let them know exactly what happened. Of course, my daughter at the time was extremely young. She was very small, and of course she wouldn't understand, or didn't understand. My husband was supportive, but it was really kind of something even still that was fresh in my mind, and I didn't really sit down and talk to them about it. It's not that I was ashamed, of course, but I didn't think at that time that it was as important than anything else that I had done, I guess. Of course, other people think otherwise now, but at the time, I just considered it was a mission that we needed to do, and I participated in it, and I had got a lot of experiences and memories now of what happened, but I didn't really want to talk much about it then. I didn't think that at that time that it was really of any importance, other than that I had completed a mission and we all came home safe and sound.
Now that you've had some time to look back, and looking back at your time with the First Division, what is your proudest moment?
I'm not sure if I should answer that question because I'm not sure that I take pride in it. I just know that I did what I was supposed to do, so I'm not sure that
Do you take, is it, the First Division and the legacy and the history, do you take pride in being a part of that?
Yes.
Can you talk to that? I mean, understanding that this is you're a professional, and this is a job and a mission that you accomplished. What does it mean to be a part of the history of the First Division? Do you have pride in your role as one member of this legacy that is so important and incredible?
Yes.
Hold on 1 second.
Just a point.
At one time I was asked about what I thought it would be to be a part of the Big Red One. In the beginning, as soldiers know, you you do a mission and you complete it, and that's your job. And then as a Big Red 1 soldier, as time progressed, I started understanding the pride that I had on my sleeve. When I came back, I had the distinguished honor to be able to put that patch on my shoulder, on my sleeve, and wear it with pride because of the history that is behind it. Not many people have that. And even though I hadn't completed my time in service, and all the other units that I had been a part of and had the opportunity to be a part of, and even in my other tour that I'd taken overseas, even afterwards, I still had that ability to wear that patch on my shoulder or on my sleeve. And it's an honor. It's a true honor to have that on there. People respect it. People know the history of it. They talk about it in the movies, and you know, the fighting and all that had been done in the past. And I got to wear and still have that ability to put that patch on my sleeve and wear it with pride. There's not many people that can do that, and I'm glad that I'm one of them that can.
Great, great. Brenda, you've gone on to do some amazing things. One is you started the First Nations Women Warriors, and you are office manager in a law firm. Would you say that a lot of the skills that you learned working with the First Division informed your later life, your ability to do these amazing things?
You know, having worked with the 1st Infantry Division and the experiences that I had gone through and the challenges that I went through also taught me a lot of things that I can carry on in my current life, where I am today. Number one, I'm a law office manager, and the administrative skills that you have to be able to run a communications team, and be able to, it's all in administrative and logistics. I was able to carry it on with me, from organizational skills to be able how to speak to people properly in a professional manner. These are all some, and there are many more others, but these are just a couple that you're able to learn from and be able to take along with you in your current day job, as well as I learned a little bit more on my culture side about the Native people and the part that they played in the military. And so I've also taken on those skills from my time in service and brought them into a nonprofit group that is called First Nations Women Warriors, which are females and males as well, who have served in the military. And being able to talk to them, some of them who may have PTSD, or being able to talk to them about their personal issues and helping them find other jobs or use their job skills and skill sets that they could carry on to future life and in today's society. There's still a lot of them that are having a lot of problems adjusting to the civilian life from the military lifestyle. And I'm utilizing my nonprofit side to be able to help them out where I can. And I'm also using my skill set or skills that I learned from my military, and I'm using them today in my law office and keeping it organized and being able to learn how to talk to people and on the phones and being able to adapt and being with a crowd of people. There are times where it's difficult, and I think you hear not just from me but from other soldiers. Crowds are a little intimidating, and they had been for me for a while, but I've learned to adjust and work with it. But my time with the 1st Infantry, the military, has really helped me become the person I am today, and I learned a lot from it, and I'm using those skills, and I'm carrying them on, even now.
So you're going to start with chemical
Okay.
warfare. So what you knew about the
Mhm.
chemical threat, how you trained for it,
Mm-hmm.
and did you ever end up having to put on your suit or the gear in the field?
Mm-hmm. One of the more important things, or I shouldn't say more important, one of the important things that we had to train for on a regular basis was for chemical attacks. And we focused heavily on it in our communications equipment, or on our communications equipment, from learning how to establish our whole system, communication system, while having our gear on. It was extremely challenging in the beginning. Personally, I'm actually a little bit claustrophobic. So when I initially started training for putting on a protective mask or a chemical mask, I had difficulties breathing because I felt very claustrophobic. And it took some time for me to be able to learn how to properly breathe in the mask itself. And then, of course, putting on the rest of the equipment, which is extremely hot anyway. It was really challenging. For some soldiers, it wasn't so bad. They weren't claustrophobic, but I was one of them that was. So it was kind of hard for me to be able to do my job on top of that. Just having it on for me was a challenge. But again, I wasn't going to let anyone get the best of me, so I had to mentally, as they would say, psych myself out. And I would have the gear on, and once I had it on, then you start from the very beginning. You get in your vehicle and you have to learn how to drive it with the equipment on, and you have to learn how to set up a generator system and put up an antenna and set communications in for with all of this gear on. And a few other things that we did was we would walk around during the daytime in full gear, just put it on and walk around, just so that we would become accustomed to it. It would be just, like they would say, another layer of clothing. And I adjusted. I had done it so frequently, so often, that it did not even bother me in the end when we had to actually go, when we were in Iraq, and we had to put it on there. It didn't faze me. But the training was so extensive in the gear, and they were insistent that because that Saddam Hussein had used chemicals, that we were having to learn to train heavily on that equipment and how to use that. So in the long run, it actually, the training, they say repetitiveness, constant working with that type of training, you'll become accustomed to it. And we did. Today, I probably could wear that mask again and not be afraid of it, but it was a long haul, and it took some time, as well as we had the nerve agent injectors. Of course, they were the real thing, and we were all very scared of them, but we did have that, as well as the real chemical gear that was placed in a cellophane sealed bag, which we were told to never ever take it out. And we didn't until told to do so. But we did a lot of training in that chemical gear, and we became very proficient to the point where we were not actually worried about it. And we knew we could do our job. We trained enough.
I could really relate to that. I'm claustrophobic too, Brenda. I'm just like, what would I have done at
When you
that
run
moment?
outside, what is communication out there? What is the importance of it? And what happens if the job isn't done?
Okay. I really don't think that a lot of people understand the importance of communications. And it's like people in or soldiers that are in the communications field, we have the saying, you can talk about us, but you can't talk without us. We are always the first ones in when the first unit goes out. You have to have communications with any unit that goes out. I don't care if you're in aviation, if you're in the medical field, if you're an MP, it doesn't matter even if you're a supply sergeant or even if you are administrative. Everybody has to have communications. Even the tank that is rolling on the front line, he has to have communications. An infantry foot soldier who is, running and shooting, he has to have communications. They all have to have communications in order to survive. From calling in more ammunition, more supplies, more food, more water, even from calling in airstrikes. Everybody needs to have communications, and the field that I chose was the communications field. When I originally went into it, I had no clue the importance of it. I just took an interest in it. I like the equipment. To me, it was mobile. We could move with anyone, and I thought that was wonderful. I did not want to go into the military at a desk job where I would be just sitting in one spot. I wanted to do something more interesting, and it definitely is very interesting. We were able to communicate with other countries. I served in one of my units with the Canadian Army and integrated communications with them. So it doesn't matter that it's just specific units. It's also other countries that the communications field has to integrate with. And that was definitely seen during Desert Storm. There was a lot of communications. They were on the front line. There were relay teams that were in the middle. There were terminating teams. There were switchboards. There were, even just small telephones, even small little radios. Communications is a very large necessity in the military. And I was glad that I was a part of it, and it definitely taught me a lot. I grew up quick in learning about it, and I'm glad that I did.
And communications was threatened, what would happen?
If the communications was, as they would say, threatened or taken out or blown up, I think there would be a lot of chaos. Not necessarily if you have soldiers that are very in tuned to what their specific job is, but overall, as time progresses, there would be chaos because no one would know how and when to do airstrikes if necessary, if you were in battle. If you needed more supplies to any unit, no one would know when to bring it. No one could call in certain coordinates of locations where they are. Today we use the GPS to be able to get from one location to the other. Those are the type of communications that would be shut down. There would be chaos. And I guess if we could relate it to today, how does an individual feel when their cell phone is taken away from them, or their iPad, or the internet is shut down? That's, I think, what you could relate it to. And multiply it more if you're in a panic because your life is in jeopardy.
I think people could really relate to that.
I think that's true. So one add-on there, and I think Paul is really, the First Division Museum wants our visitors to understand that our role as like the glue, you talk about the Canadian Army, understanding that you worked as the First Division, we worked with many units to orchestrate what happened in Desert Storm. Can you just set that up for me and just understand that, like, you worked with the Canadian Army. Who else were you coordinating with? Because in Desert Storm, I mean, there were groups, countries having military move in this orchestrated pattern to accomplish the overall mission.
I think it's a little difficult for me to elaborate on that because, and it's not that I wouldn't want to,
Okay.
but it's because the unit that I was with was a mobile communications team that we traveled a lot. We didn't really get to see a lot as far as other units, I guess you could say.
Okay.
You had the front lines, and there would be a team with them, and then there would be us, and we would be relay teams, and then there was the rear echelon. So every time, like a tanker unit would up and have to move, even if it was within 24 hours or 12 hours. The communications team was going with them, and we were behind that.
Okay.
And then, so we didn't get to see anybody. It was just us. We were probably 54 people at the most in our group, and that was it. There was nobody else. It was just us. We got to see some Apaches fly over. We were right there with the burning oil wells. But from the time we left, everyone at the main site picked up our equipment and left. We didn't see anybody else other than just a couple locals from time to time. We got to watch the B-52 bombers at night. We felt all of the rumbles from all of the bombing that went on. But we didn't, the Canadian Army that I was able to work with, was actually when I was stationed in Germany in 2nd AD in Ansbach. That's when I was able to work with them on a frequent basis. But I knew that there were other countries that were out there, obviously, with us. I just didn't get the opportunity to work with them, I guess you could say, per se, with Big Red One.
Okay.
Sorry.
Great. No, not at all. That's great. It actually just gave us some really good information about feeling the bombs come rolling over.
Yeah, right.
Those are things that again we, last night at dinner, the jet fuel, those like visceral things that you experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's it for this. I think I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Now we can get on to the fun stuff, Brenda.
Yay!
When we were talking about the intro video, what we need are some short phrases, words, comments. You can be as energetic as you want.
Mm-hmm.
You can be yourself. I think you heard Paul say last night, he wants all of our interview subjects for Soldier Stories to say, I am Brenda McEwing, and I was a Big Red One soldier. Now, we're gonna have you say it twice. We're gonna have you say was and am.
Okay.
So, you can use your hands, you can give it some energy, you can do what you want with this. You can let loose now.
Okay.
And again, these are going to be quick bites. So really, everything we're going to ask you from now on is just like 5 words. Give me this as succinct as possible, and we can talk through how to say that if you're questioning it. But do you want to start with? My name is Brenda McEwing, and I'm a Big Red One soldier.
Okay.
And you're going to look at the Big Red 1-1.
Okay. Yeah.
To reinforce that.
What a coincidence.
It's like that was produced.
And you can say it a couple times.
Okay. I am Brenda McEwing, and I am a Big Red One soldier. Good? No, another again?
I am Brenda McEwing, and I was a Big Red One soldier.
Yeah.
I am Brenda McEwing, and I was a Big Red One soldier.
Here's another one. If you're gonna be one, be a Big Red One.
If you're going to be one, be a Big Red One.
Is that cheesy? Would you ever say that?
No.
Okay. Okay. Then let me confirm.
If you want a job done, you can depend on the men and the women of the Big Red One. Okay.
So can we just do the first one again?
My name is Brenda McEwing, and I am a Big Red One soldier.
Okay. My name is Brenda McEwing, and I am a Big Red One soldier.
My name is Brenda McEwing, and I was a Big Red One soldier.
My name is Brenda McEwing, and I was a Big Red One soldier.
And just in a few words, can you tell us why you joined the military? I joined the military I wanted something different than my small town.
That's so true, yes. I joined the military because I wanted to follow in my family's legacy, and I wanted to travel.
When you put on the uniform, when you put on that patch, what does that make you feel?
When I wear the Big Red One patch on my sleeve, it gives me a lot of pride to know that I could be a part of such an honorable unit.
When you say you joined the military to travel, did you travel the world? Did this give you an opportunity to travel the world?
When I joined the military, and I say to be able to travel, I really did get an opportunity to travel. I was able to be a part of a unit in Korea. I was in Germany. I served in Iraq. I served in several of the states within the United States. So I had an opportunity to be able to visit many things and also learn a lot about culture. And I grew up fast.
Wonderful.
Could you repeat just that last part, Brenda? Just look at the big red one and say, I grew up fast.
I grew up very fast. I matured quickly.
Try one more, just as I grew up fast. Okay, right at that one.
I grew up fast.
Great.
I have one question for you. Now, I know that I'm staring here at the big red one.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you obviously see me over there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you see all my facial expressions,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, we're looking at you.
Okay. I know.
Just so you know, now that we're just about done, you know, there's a camera right here, and where the one is exactly, there's a lens behind that, but it's because of the glass.
Because of the glare of the glass.
Yeah,
on the
we
big
didn't
red
want you
one.
to feel like you're looking into a camera, but that's
Yes.
where the camera is.
That actually, that was one of my issues in some of the other interviews that I had done,
Yeah.
was looking into that camera, because
Sure.
I'm easy when it comes to being able to talk, but when you put a camera in front of me, it's completely different.
Oh, it is
Oh,
from
that's
most
why.
Everyone.
people.
That's why we wanted to do it this way,
Right.
so you,
Yes.
we're looking at something comfortable
Right,
instead of, and it's
Right.
good you didn't know the camera was there,
right.
so
'Cause,
I guess we're doing our job.
it was perfect, because I mean, I was, almost 7 years in being a communications instructor, and I could stand up in hundreds of people and just talk. But soon as someone walked in the room and pulled the camera out, I would get flustered. It's a mental thing.
It's
Sure.
very,
It's
very,
totally a mental
very
thing.
common.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're glad you didn't feel like, you were put on the spot that way.
Brenda, can I ask you one other thing?
Sure.
To tell the one there, in a few words, what would you like people to know about your service?
That's a very difficult question to answer, because I don't think that I look at my time in service as I don't look at my time in the service probably in the same aspect as other people do. Because when I joined, it was my job and it was my mission. I guess that's kind of like asking somebody who goes to work every day, what do you think of your job? Whether they like it or not, I don't think they really think about it at times. And when I was serving with the 1st Infantry Division and any of my other units in the military, I looked at it as a job. At times a very complicated job, a very difficult job, but I didn't look at it any different than anybody else does when they get up in the morning and go to work. I did my job.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
done. Thank you. Good
Wow.
job.
Yes.